Hi, this demonstration will walk you through how to integrate your ServiceMax field system with that of your accounting software. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be using ServiceMax Express Edition, and as for the accounting software, I'm going to be using QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online Edition. As for the desktop, I'm going to be using QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise 14, and as for the online, I'll be using QuickBooks Online Plus. So let's begin by logging into my ServiceMax system. Once I log into the system, we're going to see how all the work orders and the associated records like contacts, accounts, and service parts can be integrated directly into your QuickBooks. To begin with, I'm going to pick up a few work orders and then integrate probably one or two with the desktop. For those of you using QuickBooks Desktop Edition, we make use of the web connector, which lets us push and pull data into your QuickBooks. So to begin with, I'm going to go to the generate work order list, which gives me the list of all work orders that needs to be synced, all closed work orders rather, that needs to be synced into QuickBooks system. So I'm going to pick up one of those and see how this can be pushed into QuickBooks Desktop. So to begin with, this is a typical work order in a ServiceMax system. You have various details as to who the account is or who the customer is, who the contact is for a given work order, and all other necessary details in terms of shipping address, work order details, and so on. In order to sync this work order into QuickBooks, the trigger points generate. It always needs to be marked as invoice, and also the work order status needs to be closed. And lastly, it needs to have at least one work order detail or a service part associated with it. So very quickly, I'm going to show you how it can be synced using the web connector into your QuickBooks Desktop. So you'll see a profile for those of you registered with DBSync. Buying the connector with DBSync, we will add a profile onto your web connector, which once activated, you can activate or deactivate it. Activate the profile by clicking on the checkbox, and you can also auto schedule it. If you were to click the auto run checkbox, it lets you configure the desired time interval. The least QuickBooks recommends is 10 minutes, or you can also configure it to run, say, end of every day, end of every hour, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the update selected button. At this point, it'll actually queue up all the work orders for whom the generate flag is marked as invoice and push them into QuickBooks. So once I initiate the sync, you'll see the progress bar, and you can also go up to QuickBooks and see you can see the data coming along as the sync is under progress. So if there is a customer, in wake of a customer not existing, DBSync will create the customer for you. You'll also add the contact information, and for every work order, you'll also have a job against it. And lastly, the actual work order record from ServiceMax is directly translated as an invoice transaction into your QuickBooks. Alright, so we have the invoice coming here. So you have the account or the customer created in QuickBooks directly out of ServiceMax, and also the contact associated with the work order also coming in, and lastly the invoice transaction with the work order detail and the quantity attached to it. So we can also bring the invoice as a final invoice. At this point in time, we bring the invoice as a pending, so it gives the bookkeeper or the accounting person to actually mark it accordingly into their accounting system. So once the record is in QuickBooks, if you were to go back to Salesforce, if you were to reload the page, you'll actually see the acknowledgement message coming we are doing a write back of the data into Salesforce. So the generate flag turns as invoice updated, and also the accounting ID is written back onto the same work order record, and also the sync error field reads as invoice updated. So this is more of an acknowledgement message which says the sync was completed successfully. In case there is an error, we also capture the error details within Salesforce or ServiceMax. So the person actually looking at the work order need not actually go out of the system. So once you go back to the list of all the work orders that are queued up to be synced, you can see the record being moved out of uh, the queue as soon as it has been synced. So at this point in time, we have two other work orders which are ready to be synced. We're going to see how the same can be integrated with the QuickBooks Online software. Right. From a process standpoint, there's not much change, but the only change, for those of you using QuickBooks Online, the only change one would see is how you would invoke the integration. You will probably have the option of processing each record individually through a button called a Sync QuickBooks Online, or you could actually process an entire batch by going back to the list of all the work orders which are queued up by using the button Sync Work Order Batch to QuickBooks Online. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and process this information and see how this flows into my QuickBooks Online system. Like I said, I'm using QuickBooks Online Plus, and we'll see how this can flow into QuickBooks Online with a click of a button. So once I click the button, you'll have a pop-up box which opens up. It says, the integration is in progress. Once the integration is complete, you'll see the message or the write backs happening into ServiceMax, which tells whether a work order was integrated into your QuickBooks Online, or if there's any error. You'll see the error details captured in the sync error field. Alright, so it says the QuickBooks updated QuickBooks Online completed. So I'm going to close the window. I'm going to just do a quick refresh. So it says, there are no more work orders that are queued up to be synced. So at this point in time, if you were to go to synced work orders, have all the three orders that were processed a while back. So one for desktop and the other two for the online. So for those of you using online version, the process is pretty much going to be the same. You'll see the generate flags changing as invoice updated, and you also have the sync error field reading as invoice updated, and we also capture the error details onto the sync error field. So let's go back to QuickBooks and see if records got pushed in. Alright, so let's look for Good Samaritan Hospital. There we go. So if you were to look up all the details, every detail that is filled in ServiceMax in terms of shipping and billing addresses, phone numbers, all of them are pushed into your QuickBooks Online, and it has also generated an invoice for the same work order record in ServiceMax. There we go. You have the product or the service item coming in, what the quantities, and what are the billing rates, and finally the invoice total amount. So this completes the demonstration of integrating ServiceMax system with QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Thank you.